Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a wrap-up video. I am going to start labeling my wrap-ups or recently read books by numbers instead of going by month, because I have kind of a hard time keeping up month-wise, especially if I read a lot of books the previous month. So this one is books that I read in September, but it is going to be labeled like 001 or something like that. But let's get right into it, and here we go. My first book that I read in September, or finished in September, I actually finished on September 1st. I actually started it in August, but that is What She Found in the Woods by Josephine Angelini. Josephine Angelini is my favorite author of all time, and this book was no different. I really like this book. I enjoyed it so much that I started recommending it to people right away. It's a perfect October or like spooky read because it is like a mystery thriller kind of book, but it does deal with some other topics. It's not just like a mystery thriller. It does have a lot of talk about medications, and it deals with that overarching topic of, do I go more homeopathic or do I go more clinical when I'm trying to medicate myself, or which way do I go? What's healthier? What's better for your body? What's better for your mind? And so Josephine Angelini goes into that topic. The main character is also schizophrenic, so there is a lot of talk about mental health in this book, but most of it is schizophrenia and what that means. And then there is a really big overarching topic of cultural appropriation and how that is just one face that racism takes on, and kind of what that means, what that entails. And our character really has to look inward and look at her past and what that's done to other people. All of her actions have had these huge overarching consequences, and now she is trying to live out that time. In this book, our main character goes to live with her grandparents after a really horrible incident. Her grandparents are those type of people that if you have anything wrong with you, mental health or otherwise, yes, they know about it. Do they want you to talk about it? No. Do they acknowledge it? No. And so she's dealing with that. She meets a wild boy, or what she calls this wild boy, out in the woods when she is out riding and just kind of enjoying life, or attempting to enjoy life or move on from her past. And things go from there. Like I said, there is a mystery thriller element to this book, and it was just so out of my comfort zone for genres. I don't really read mystery thrillers, but this author is a auto buy for me, and so I just really had to read this book. I enjoyed it a lot. I loved all the topics that the author took and kind of how she dealt with those, and I think this is a really important read, but I also think this is just a really enjoyable read, especially if you like mystery thrillers. And like I said, it's a perfect read for the month of October during the spooky season. Wicked Saints was my next read, and I buddy read this with Noria from Noria Reads. As you know, if you've been on my channel for any amount of time, is that Noria and I buddy read 24/7. Usually she leaves me in the dust, and I am, straggling behind, not because I'm behind on my buddy read chapters or page count of the day. It's because she reads a book in literally one day and I am forced to catch up. But I love her to death. Wicked Saints was another one of those books where I went in knowing I was going to enjoy the book, but didn't actually realize that I was going to absolutely love the book. So I love this book a lot. I love the characters, the depths of the characters, and the journey the characters go on physically and kind of internally. We have Nadia, who is basically raised in a church, and she has the power to talk or commune with the gods, and in return the gods give her powers. And she was raised to hate other magic wielders, especially the wielders who got their magic and power from blood. So these other basically powerful beings cut themselves, they use the blood in a book with spells. The combination of the two makes them extremely powerful, and she was raised to really hate these beings. And she goes into this just very internal struggle of, when she meets these other people, because they are people, when she meets these other people, how they're not monsters like she was taught, how they aren't horrible how she was taught, how they have aligning interests and goals and want the same outcome, and how she really struggles with her beliefs and what she was raised and what might be a little bit more reality. And it was just one of the most interesting parts of the book, was watching Nadia kind of navigate that. We have a prince. You don't think he's going to be an underlying character or super important character at the beginning of the book. At least for me, his character chapters were just kind of annoying, I guess. I didn't care about him. I didn't see how they fit into the plot. And then about halfway, or a little bit more than halfway through, you start to see why we got his chapters, all the information that his chapters provided. There was a reasoning behind all of it, and I thought that part of the book, that mechanism of the book, was just so incredibly well done, and I really liked it. I went from thinking, gosh, I just don't want to read these chapters, to where are these chapters? I need to know more. And if an author can do that, I'm impressed. And then we have The Boy, or it's like a hate to love. Nadia meets this blood wielder, and he is very mysterious. We don't know a lot about him. His character is one of the most unique and well-developed characters that I've read in a very long time. And I don't want to say a lot about his character because it's just such a thrill and so much fun to learn about his character slowly. And then what you learn at the very end is just, it's almost magic in and of itself within the writing, how this book ends, how it sets you up for the sequel, Ruthless Gods. And yes, I'm not going to say much more about it because it was just so well done, and I feel like if I said too much, it might start to give stuff away. I recommend going into this book not knowing pretty much anything about it if you haven't read it so far. And for those of you that have read it, do you agree with anything that I just said? I'm curious, because that is 100% how I feel, and I'm standing by it. The next book that I read was An Ember in the Ashes by Sarah-ndipity Heir. This is another Noria buddy read, and this is one of those books where I started and I was like 200 pages ahead or something like that, and then I was like, Noria, you need to catch up. She's like, I haven't even started it. I'm like, well, you need to start it. And then she's like, well, I started and finished it in less than a day. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so we love this book. We both own books 2 and 3, and we want to read it before the sequel comes out in December, or I think it's the conclusion of the entire series, book 4. But I really, really, really enjoyed this book. We have Laya, she's pretty much a peasant in this kingdom. She's pretty much a peasant, and basically her entire family is taken, but her family was also part of a rebellion. You learn very quickly in the book, like the first chapter, that her and her brother have lost their parents, and now she is living with her grandparents. Basically, a lot of things happen right at the beginning of the book. Her brother is arrested for treason, and she then has this plan to first infiltrate the rebellion and then infiltrate the kingdom to get him back. The other main character, this is multiple perspective, is Elias, and he is a soldier within the kingdom. So you can kind of see where these two people have very conflicting goals and outcomes that they want for their lives, how they wouldn't get along or would like each other, and they would be fighting against each other the entire time. But how these two characters came together was just really well done, and I just enjoyed it a lot. The first book isn't very romance heavy, but I hear that books 2, 3, and 4 are probably going to be more romance heavy, but this one is just very plot driven. You learn about the character, yes, but it's very plot driven, and I think the purpose of book 1 was really to set you up for the rest of the series, and I'm really excited to see how intricate the next few books get, especially before the conclusion comes out in December. This book is a little bit more violent than I was expecting. There are tortures, there's talk about rape, torture, death, and some of those are on page. And honestly, it just added to the book. It added to how intricate this book was kind of woven together, and I really enjoyed that. My next read was Naruto by Masashi Kishimoto, and this is volume 4. And if you're not a stranger to my channel, you know that I absolutely love Naruto with all my heart, and I have never read the manga, so I'm reading the manga all the way through for the first time, and this was my next one. Masashi Kishimoto's art and his storyline is just, it's so great. I feel like you get a little bit more within the manga than you do in the anime, which is, you know, normal for this type of content, but I love how much detail he gives to every single character, even the side characters, even the villain side characters. You get so much from each character, and I just really love that. I'm not going to say much about it because Naruto is well known, especially if you're an anime or manga reader, but just know that I love this like I love everything else. Naruto is just, it's a fun read. It's just a fun, light read. Then my next book was Ronin Rising by Leigh Bardugo. This is the 3rd book in the Grishaverse trilogy before the duology, which I heard is being made into a trilogy. I don't actually know what's going on, but it's fine. I'm not going to say much more about this because I did put up a Grishaverse trilogy reaction rant video. And so if you want to know my reaction or thoughts about this trilogy or Ronin Rising in particular, please check out that video. All you need to know is that I ranted about it in a negative way. I did not like this series. I did not like the conclusion of this book. And this might be the first series or first book where there are such mixed reviews on it. People either love it or hate it. This is the first time I've ever been on the hating side. Usually usually when people have mixed reviews, I usually land more towards the positive or enjoyment end of that stick. But for some reason, I just did not like this book. I did not like this series. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. If you want to know or hear more about my thoughts on this, you can go to that rant, reaction / review video. I don't even know what I labeled it at this point. And it is one of my more humorous videos, so enjoy that. My next book that I read was The Zodiac Legacy by Stan Lee and Stuart Moore, and the art was done by Andy Tong. And I really enjoyed this book. I did feel that for a middle grade, it might have been a little bit harder to understand or follow. It's almost on the verge of YA, but if you go into bookstores, it is in the young reader section, or if you go into like half price books, it's not in the young adult, it's in the young readers, which is like elementary through middle school pretty much, but it is on the harder side of kind of understanding and comprehending what's happening and kind of following the storyline. But all in all, I think it was really well done, and it is a book where the powers of the zodiac are released into the world. These zodiac powers find people who are part of their zodiac. So the horse zodiac power goes to someone with the horse zodiac as their zodiac. There is this horrible, I don't think they're a government agency, I just think they're an agency, and they are trying to get all the power of the zodiac for themselves because, you know, what agency doesn't want all that power to themselves? And then there is the little guys who just want to stop that agency and kind of save the world, make sure the balance is found with the zodiac powers released, and kind of what that means. There is a lot of travel in this book. There is a lot of international travel with this book, meaning that there's a lot of different representations. I think there's someone from France, there is someone from the Netherlands, there's someone from South Africa, and so they travel around the world, and those people are really represented in this book, and I felt like that part of the book was really well done. And they even kind of bring in some of the different languages or cultures in the book, and I found that really intriguing. I don't know if that's because of my background or if that's just because it was an intriguing part of the book, but it was interesting. All in all, I'm not super excited to pick up book 2, but I did like book 1. So take with that what you will. That is kind of my feelings on this. My next read was Defiance by CJ Redwine. I wasn't a huge fan of this book. I enjoyed it. Again, I will pick up book 2. I listened to this on audiobook. I will be unhauling this book because I will never reread it, and I will just continue on with the series via audiobook. But it was a good series, and basically it is in a world much like ours, but at one point huge giant monsters were attacking. There was a group of people who defeated these monsters and then built up walled cities. The monsters still live outside the wall, but within the cities, an environment or community where people are relatively safe. Women are kind of brought down low on kind of the spectrum. Women aren't seen as very much of anything besides, I guess you could go back to what women were once thought of as just a wife, just the person that puts meals on the table and is there to make a family. They aren't taught to read, they aren't taught to fight or defend themselves, and it is even illegal for them to go out without a male present by their side. And so we have Rachel, who her father has taught her to hunt, has taught her how to defend herself, and he goes missing. And so obviously she's like, well, he went out on a mission, never came back, so I have to go over this wall where there's monsters, where there are mercenaries, where there are people and things that would kill her. And she goes with her father's apprentice, and they kind of go together. This is another book where it was very intricate, but I'm not sure if the intricacies were written, explain, or I don't know. They weren't easy to comprehend and follow if you weren't like fully immersed into the book, which I did listen to this on audiobook, and maybe that's kind of where I went wrong. But this is a book from 2012, so it is a little bit older, especially in the YA world where some books just don't age as well as others. So it is super interesting, and I am interested in reading more of this series. It's just I'm not super excited to get to them, and we'll probably put it off for at least a little bit. The last book that I read was Blood Heir by Emily Wenzhou, and I really like this book. I heard very mixed reviews about it, and this is one of those books where I fell on the more enjoyment side than the hating side, and I just really like this book. This is supposed to be an Anastasia retelling, and the princess does have a very deadly gift. She can control others via their blood. I was very like blood magic heavy and not now I just want to read books about books with blood magic. So if you have any really awesome fantasies with blood magic, whether it's YA, new adult, or adult, send them my way because I'm totally into it. Basically, she's on this war path to find the person who set her up and get them to clear her name, basically. The first part of this task is to go and find basically a con man who's supposed to know where this guy who basically set up her entire family and killed her father. And this con man is supposed to know who the guy is and where he is, or if he doesn't know, he's supposed to be the best at and most equipped to find this guy. Apparently he can find anyone, and so her first task is breaking him out of jail. Kind of where the story starts, she's breaking him out of jail and they go together to find this guy who killed her father and then framed her for it. I liked the blood magic or blood power. I really liked that. I thought it was amazing. I really liked how it was written, and I loved all the political intrigue. I love a good YA fantasy with political intrigue, and I love when it's done well. And it was done so well in this one that I was super interested the entire time. I was like, who did this? Like, I can't tell. And every time I thought I knew who did it, I was like, maybe not. And when political intrigue is done that well, I'm just like in awe. But this book wasn't perfect. I felt like some of the character deaths, whether they were side or main characters and they were killed off, they didn't have as much emotional impact as I wanted them to have. We didn't get to explore the character and who they were and what their beliefs were, what their end goal was before they were killed off. And that's something that I just really wish was done a little bit more. And they didn't necessarily make sense, and I felt maybe like the author was killing off the characters just to kill off characters to make the story feel a little bit more brutal in that aspect. But they didn't necessarily make sense, and they didn't have the emotional impact that I think they could have had if the characters were just explored just a little bit more, if at all. And so that's my one downside of this book, and I hope it's done just a little bit better in its sequel, but I am just super excited to get to it. And yes, I really enjoyed this book. I didn't expect to like it so much just because there's multiple people who I really trust with their book recommendations because for the most part they align with mine who didn't like it. But I ended up really liking it, and it was just a really pleasant surprise. And so yes, this is my messy pile of books, but these are the books that I read in September. Yes, it was my first month ever, I think, starting booktube that I have finished my TBR completely and fully ever. So I hope you like this wrap up. Please comment down below if you have read any of these books, if you're thinking about reading any of these books, and any other thoughts. I would really appreciate it. Also, please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want more from me and some notifications when I do upload, because I have been uploading regularly, please hit that bell button to get notified when I upload, or double check to make sure the bell is clicked, because some people on YouTube have been saying that YouTube haven't been notifying them of their favorite YouTubers or booktubers uploads. I hope I'm at least one person's favorite within this community. That would be nice. But anyways, yes, please like, comment, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys all next time. All love. Bye.